Right, so I've been gone over the weekend, a few days here, and just got back into the saddle here. And I want to talk to you guys about what I ran into on this car on the first maiden voyage. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to get video driving it, but I will pretty soon. Anyway, some of the issues I ran into. One of the issues I ran into was when I was driving it at full throttle, it would eventually run out of steam. So as it, if I floored it for like 3 minutes, it would just start to lose fuel going to the carburetor and I have to let off on the gas. And then, I didn't know this till I was halfway where I was going on the freeway. And I let off the gas and it would take like, about 10 seconds or so, then it would start to be able to have power again. So it was actually running out of gas. The other thing that I ran into is the steering box is pretty worn out. I ended up having to change that. The steering had a lot of play, and so we're going to address that. I put these cheapy ampy shocks on here, and they actually ride super good, perfect. They ride. This car rides smoother than any other bugs that I have. So, and it's lowered. So if you notice the drop spindles here, so I have that. Was pretty good. But when I got, so that was pretty irritating. I was going to try and do a video driving it, but it was actually pretty much a white knuckle drive because I was on the freeway, and every time it was pretty funny as I go to pass a truck, or I was like behind a truck for a while, going, man, this is really slow. He's going like 50 or something, and I'm going, okay, I'm going to make a move. So I'd, open it up and hope that it didn't start to run out of steam before I got by the truck, and luckily it didn't. It just barely would get by him, and then it would start to run out of steam, and I'd pull back over in the other lane, let off the gas a little bit, and then speed up and let off the gas, speed up and kind of feather it and kind of get it to the point where it was cruising it again. It wasn't running out of fuel. So it kind of was like a governor. I could only go 55 or so. I did get it up to 65, but I also found out that it was only at 3/4 throttle, which is pretty amazing for a 36 horse. It was, I don't think I've ever driven one with a split case tranny. I've always had a full case tranny, even with my 36 horse. So the other thing we found is an oil leak. And I was just talking to Chris, and he said that there was no sealant actually on the cam plug. And so if you ever have an oil leak, it could even on your Volkswagen, and it's from that, this stuff right here, this Mega Black, if you clean it and let it dry and put it on there and leave it overnight, a couple days, maybe even, make sure it's really, really good and dry before you put everything back together. And then, and then leave it like that for, and then it usually will cure the problem. This Mega Black stuff is amazing. You could probably even, and I'm not going to say it would work, but I would try it. If you had like a little cracked case right here where they always crack, around the little plugs, you could probably even clean that off and temporarily get that to stop leaking, so you could, buy yourself some time to get a new motor. I'd try it. I mean, heck, that stuff really, really works well. I think it works better than J&B weld. In fact, you could probably put J&B weld over it first and kind of to seal the crack, and then put this stuff, a nice thick layer of this over the top of that, and it would just work amazing. So, and J&B doesn't work that great because it actually, is too brittle. That stuff's not brittle at all, but it's super hard. I mean, this stuff is like super hard. So you could probably fix an oil leak, but just from taking this cam seal back off and on, because we noticed there was an oil leak before and thought it had to be repositioned. So the other thing to look at if you have a oil leak at your flywheel is a lot of times there's a groove worn right here, right around this edge in the flywheel. And if that groove interferes with the sealing edge on your seal, which is right here, that little rib, okay, yeah, like if it's riding right next to that, it's going to leak again. So either you have to get it so that the groove lines, it's exactly right in the groove, or usually what we do is try and find a new position so that it's not touching the grooved area at all. So it can be kind of tricky because there's not much space in there. So that will prevent your oil leaks from the engine oil. So engine oil leak, running out of fuel, looks like the fuel filter is plugged. Let's go over the options of things real quick that could be. So let's say you put your engine together and you're driving your car down the road, and you floor it for a long period of time, and all of a sudden it just starts to just run out of steam. You know, you can feel that it's just running out of fuel. You let off the gas, and then you step on it again, it starts to go. You let off the gas, step on it again, it starts to go. That's usually an indication that you're running out of fuel. Okay, it could be, and this fuel pump's rebuilt, I doubt that it's this, that it doesn't have accurate fuel pressure. So that could be number one. You could have a restriction in your fuel line somewhere, or a little piece of rust that got slid off and got stuck in one of your valves in your fuel pump, okay, from the old fuel line. Possibly, mine, I'm sure it isn't, could be the float bowl level is too low, but I'm pretty sure that that's right because of how it was. Also, I did, no, in this car, that was the other one, the bottom tube wasn't bowed enough. This one's perfect. Also, it could be restriction in your fuel line. It could be a kinked fuel hose. It could be a cracked fuel hose. So if your fuel hose is cracked, what it does is it'll suck air, and then it gets air bubbled in your fuel. And if it's just a very small crack, you can have air bubbles in your fuel, and that will go up your line and actually cause not enough fuel pressure. So that's another issue you can run into. More commonly, you'll have a little bit of a leak on a Volkswagen, but on other cars, I've actually seen that be the problem. But I think in this case, it's probably, this fuel filter looks pretty full and just sucked up some garbage. So it's probably that. I've changed the fuel filter a couple times. And the other thing that it could be, and something that you might not have thought of, is okay, on the early cars, it's a vented cap. So the fuel vent on the cap could actually be restricted or non-existent and causing an issue with suction on the side. So on the later cars, you have a hose, and if that is plugged, if that hose that on the later cars, it's your fuel cap's going to be over here, right? It's on the driver's side, and if the hose that goes around, if that's restricted, plugged, or just then you could have a problem with not getting the proper fuel pressure, and it would do exactly the same thing. So those are all the things that we're checking right now, trying to figure out why it was doing that, and then I'm going to take it for another drive, and hopefully I noticed that it did it on a long hill. One of the other things I did notice driving this, again, is the steering box was, I don't know if I put this in this video, because I did one a second ago and I just deleted it. So I noticed the steering box was really loose. So we're probably going to have to, we have a later model steering box. So these are a little hard to find. And apparently they have a pitman arm, or a, whatever, not pitman arm, the steering arm, or whatever it is. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, a new arm that converts the old style into the new. So we may end up putting that steering box on here to eliminate that problem. It did drive really smooth. I mean, it was super smooth, smoother than my other cars. And I picked up these, I was at the swap meet and I picked up these MP shocks, some used ones, and they were in good shape. So the cheap MP shocks, I don't like the really stiff shocks on a Volkswagen. I want them, that's why I was looking at the MP ones. I thought they might be kind of a really cheap shock, and they actually gave it a really nice, perfect ride. A little bit firm, but pretty darn smooth. I mean, and not bumpy at all, and not bouncy. So it was actually, I was really liking these. So if you're looking for some shocks for your Bug, you might want to try these MP ones. They actually, a lot of MP parts are garbage. These ones actually seem like they're pretty good. So that's it for the maiden voyage on this car. We'll see if I can get some footage on it driving the ragtop, and but it was a little bit white knuckled, so I wasn't able to get a video driving it. I was pretty much concentrating on driving the car. So I'll talk to you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe.